All right, legends. Matt is back. So 2,670 is the overall rank. 4 trades, same as me, but a bit more cash in the bank. How are you, Matty? And how's the squad been going the last few weeks?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Squad's been going all right. I've only made 2 trades in the last 2 weeks, I think, or maybe even 2 trades in the last 3 weeks.
Nice.
Uh, one in 15, one in 16, and none in 17. So yeah, I've only made two in the last 3 weeks. So I've been banking those trades, but I've just been holding rank the last few weeks. So it's kind of time to start climbing those ranks and getting in the top 1K, I think.
Yeah, you just mentioned before that there's obviously so many different strategies that we can go for, and you were kind of thinking how important trades are going to be for the back end. You're having a bit of a look at last year's situation, and we'll go through that in a second. But really, there's so many ways to go about it. Hey, I really attack the big buy rounds, attack the 14, 17, 20, save trades for the back end, and kind of destroy those rankings back then. So where are you at the moment? You said you're a little bit confused about which way to go about it.
Yeah, it's tough. So you can see in my side, the bench is pretty rubbish at the moment. So I've got quite a few of those players that at some point will need to get out of my side. The only issue is the likes of Seyfarth and Sharp and Hands, like some of these players, they all play next week.
Yep.
So it's a matter of tossing up. Do I want to cop a 20 odd from Seyfarth this week and next week just because I'm going to get the extra number? Hold Sharp, hope he plays next week. Hope Ponga goes to Origin, maybe plays like a bench role or something like that in Origin, and Sharp gets the start. Um, there's just a lot of ways you can go about it. Weeks is now obviously at fullback, so yeah. And then Hines, there's the big Hines dilemma this week, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's lots to go. Obviously, yeah, the Ponga news is massive for teams like yourself and Seyfarth. He's in that in between range, isn't he? But next week probably doesn't help him, hey, because Tigers are a team without any Origin stars, right? So, what's your situation like for next week with numbers right now?
So right now, including Seyfarth and Sharp, I'm down one wing fullback, but
Okay,
I have 12.
yeah, okay, and then Sharp,
So
can we count him as well? That's probably the question. So, who's on the target list?
So as you can see, my hooker situation is really not great.
Is
Trading
it as
in
bad as
Egan,
mine? I don't know.
uh, look, I don't know. It's probably on par.
Yeah,
I've got Egan and Hands, although you have no hookers, to be fair.
yeah,
But Egan's just been a nightmare. Like I traded him in at like I don't know 670K or something,
yeah. He killed me.
and I could have chosen Marnie. I could have chosen Cook. I decided to go with Egan as like a pod, and it's just burnt me. And it's every week. It's like, well, he can't go worse than last week, and then he just does worse every week.
He's turned
But
off, hasn't he?
at
Because he
this point,
was incredible and then fell off a cliff.
at this point, he's 450K. So I look at him and I look at Hands and I go, well, I don't want to keep both of them, obviously, but I feel like I just at this point, Hands is probably going to go up to similar price to Egan in round 19. And maybe I just hold Egan and Hands and flick Hands in round 20 and then
Yeah.
have Egan as my backup hooker that I can loop occasionally and hopefully never have to play.
Yeah, or he turns his form around or something. At least he's going to be there every week. So, yeah, you have to now at 450. But yeah, super frustrating. And I've definitely had a better run. At least my hookers are scoring okay. Like even when
Yeah,
Brayley, got 37 from Brayley off the bench, and it's like, oh, not too bad. I got 21 one week, but like he wasn't as expensive as Egan, and then the other guys are at least scoring okay, like Grant and stuff. So yeah,
yeah. I mean,
Egan
similar to
buy is
you,
definitely the worst.
I started with like I haven't had a good hooker all season. I started with Cheese and Levi,
Yeah,
and then I went to Lussick, and then I went to Brayley, um, and then Egan. So I mean, I had Brayley and Egan at the same time, but yeah. So I'm half like, do I even bother wasting a trade? Obviously, Cook would be the target, I think, this week. Marnie's a really good option, and then you've got Grant after the. I know everyone's off Grant this week because he's obviously been rested. People are looking to trade him out, but He will be a decent target after Origin at that cheaper price. You know, my team value is not so great this season, and so maybe it's worth going 100k less to get a Grant over a Cook
Mm-hmm.
and just copying the low score this week because I have hands for next week. So if I got Cook, I would basically just be playing him over hands next week. But Cook could get me that extra 30 points this week and extra 30 points next week. So maybe that 60 points over the next 2 weeks is worth it. It's just something I have to kind of weigh up at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And points at this time of the year, it's like, well, what goal do you have this year? Obviously, coming 105th or whatever it was, 110th last year. Do you have from this position? What do you think you can get to, and what would you be happy with?
I think at this point, I have to be a bit realistic. And I think top 1K is probably my goal at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, I've got 4 trades, which is above average, but my
Mm.
team value is below average. I've got 13.25. So that's going to be tricky to manage. There's going to be a lot of coaches with lots of more trades than me and more team value that are sitting in that 5 to 10K range that are going to come in hot towards the end of the season as well.
That's fair.
And
Yeah,
then
and
there's
then
going to
there's
be
the
a
other
lot of
side of
people.
it as well with
Yeah.
the guys that are worse. I suppose like
Yeah.
you probably an interesting thing to think of for you and everyone here watching that what are you here to do? Are you here to kind of just plonk around 1100, or is it like, oh, I want to get like I can push for top 500, take some risks and have some fun with it? That's probably the thing that people need to have a look at as well. It's like, well, luck's obviously a big part of it, and you can plod your way to a better score, and you will. Like with 12 trades compared to like some people with zero right now, so well, 8, you could definitely get past a bunch of those guys. But which weeks can we target to actually make ranks on people? Because as you said, probably in like round 21, 22, 23 or something like that, when people have better team value and obviously all those extra 8 trades, they could probably launch in those weeks and have that one better player than you probably if they have an extra 300k team value. Whereas now, these next few weeks might be the couple to kind of launch. Is that somewhere where you're thinking?
Yeah. That's what I've kind of been tossing up today.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good opportunity to make ranks this week, next week, while everyone's low on trades and they can't make these moves. And then it's also, do you want to get in? Do you want to get in super pods to try and like actually launch? So
Yeah. Okay.
maybe at hooker instead of instead of Marnie, and like maybe it's a Jacob
Yep.
Little I get in and hope he can average the second, like average better than Amani and at cheaper price than a Cook. So I think the next few weeks are going to be very pivotal because whoever you bring in trade wise, you're going to probably have to keep for the rest of the season. And as you can see, I've got Weeks, Hands, Pikura, Safe Fast, Sharp, just those 5 at least that will need to come out. And
Yeah.
I've got 12 trades left, so that leaves 7. And then you could also say Cody Walker, is he, will I have to just hold on to him because of team value? Originally, my plan was to trade Cody Walker to Hines either this week or next week with that money in the bank. But the hooker situation has kind of caught my attention as well. And then Weeks obviously losing his halfback role means that he's probably more of an urgent trade than Cody Walker, especially with Walker playing next week.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Walker's got the full run of games now, whereas Weeks at fullback, if he didn't have that crazy run on the weekend, that was an incredible try. If he didn't have that, then he's in the low 20s, right? So, and we know what he scored at fullback without those kick meters and goal kicking and stuff for Manly. And you can't compare him to that. I think Manly to here, it's a bit different, but still not ideal. And not in a great team either. So, yeah, you probably got 5 or 6 guys to move on, and then what we can bank on probably 4 injuries or something like that as well. So to probably 2 or 3 injuries to guys you don't want to trade out either. So it's a tough little section, but yeah, there's as you were saying there, it could be the ability to launch doesn't mean use all the trades. It means might like make that one gun move that might net you 30 points here in the next couple of weeks there, to really improve that rank and that score as well for sure.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
Cook playing the first game isn't ideal because, like, if Hands gets a decent score, I can probably be a little bit more reserved with my trades and then actually go and launch next week. But Cook playing that first game means I kind of have to make that decision if whether I'm going to get him or not uh, by tomorrow. So yeah, it's a tough one. But I was showing you before that you're going to bring up what we went through our chat history and had a look at what kind of trades that I made last season and how many trades I had left throughout the last period compared to this year.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool to have a look at, just to give you a general idea on where we're at. So I went through mine on the pod and the channel there a couple of days ago, and I thought that was pretty interesting there that I came into it the same situation with you. One trade left going into round 20, so 9 for that last 8 rounds, and I ran out with a couple of weeks to go, but I used 3 in that first week, and then I went double double, so it left me not much to use in that last couple, which probably hurt. Whereas if I think myself this time, if I end up in that same situation, it might be 2 in round 20, 1 or 2 in 21, and then maybe 1 in the next, and it leaves you a couple there for the back end as well, just to keep improving rather than fall off a cliff in that last bunch of rounds. But yeah, obviously injuries and everything changes things. But you mentioned they used 5 trades across round 20 and 21, so exact same as me in that scenario. And we are obviously, I think you were a little bit ahead of me at the time, so that was a fun little period. 2 trades made in round 23, so you left them in 22, and then had 2 left for the last, 4 rounds there, 24, 25, 26, 27. So yeah, and then you fell off a little bit in that back end, right? The last 4 rounds.
Yeah, I stayed in the top 100. I was doing pretty well
That's
right
right.
up until around 27
Right.
because 27 is when we had, although I think at that point in round 23 or whatever, when I used those 2 trades, I think I was around rank 50 or inside the
Okay.
top 50. And then it was like a slow drop off, but I was still in the top 100. I think I was ranked 90 going into the last round. And then I had 3 eels on the buy, which really cooked me.
Plus the restings, yeah. So these are your 2 trades in round 23, which popped you down to 2. But good
Yeah.
trades of that. Dan Russell, the Jet, at 312K. We haven't even seen him this year. And then Isaiah Yo, obviously there. And Sandon Smith had that good little run at the back end of last year. And DeBella must have got injured, I think, in that week, eh?
Suspended, I think. Yeah.
Suspended. That's right. Oh, yep. Diving at the legs. Uh, he was doing that for fun last year. I remember that. It was like every tackle, I was like, oh, hip drops and diving at legs. It was scary. So yeah, so one trade used 26 and 27 there, and then you were a lot short, weren't you, in 27? Do you remember? Might have
I'm
been
not
like 10 or
actually
11.
sure how many short. It could have been 2 short. It could have been. I
I
remember I had
was
at
I had
least
like
three
10 or
short going
11.
into them.
So
Well,
I had like 10 or 11. It was something
oh,
ridiculously low. Everyone was
okay. I
like,
must have been way short then.
I think if you had 15, you made like bulk ranks. So
That's crazy.
but you didn't lose that much if you were 90 down and then 110. So so yeah, you mentioned this year. This year, obviously, you got the Broncos, Cows, Tigers, and then the Wars are all got buys in the last 4 rounds, which is probably when we'll be struggling for trades, and it's going to be harder to maneuver around that time. So you got 2 Broncos, 1 Cow, 3 Tigers, and 1 Wars. So have you had a little think about that situation and what to potentially do?
Yeah, well, I think that it's much better than last year. Just having because last year we had everyone had a bunch of eels because I think they played all of the buy rounds, or at least
Yeah, that's right.
they played
Yep.
the last buy round at least. So I think everyone was in the same boat. But if you had obviously 1 or 2, you were much better set up. So yeah, having 3 just really cooked me. So I think having 3 Tigers, that'll go down to 2 once Seyfarth comes out.
Yep.
So that won't be too bad. And then Galvin and Fainu, they might, like, one of them might leave my team before then as well. So I don't think that'll be too much of a problem. But I just think if you are bringing in any Warriors players at the moment, like, obviously they don't play round 19, so it's no one's really targeting them a whole lot. But even your Chanel Harris Davidas and the likes of those guys that you're going to keep in your team, just be wary of that last round, because the last round is the most chaotic round of the season. And if you said that you're down to like 12 or something crazy like that, then you know the one extra player makes a huge difference. That could be 40 or 50 points that could, help boost you up into that upper echelon that you want to get into in the last round.
Yeah, which is where we talk about launching a little bit in like 13, 16, 19. If someone has 11 players, you have 13, that could be 80 or 100 points better. And that's, hundreds of ranks, 500 ranks, 1,000 ranks, depending where you are, which could happen in that last few rounds if the injuries do hit. Like, injuries are going to happen, and there were only a few in the back end of last year. Most of us just run out of trades, and then if you have a few guys on buy, and then they have restings as well, that's where it kind of is a bit of an avalanche. But yeah, if you can have that couple of trades, you're just getting an extra player on your opponent. So, and yeah, like, yes, a lot less people are kind of right into it in the last few rounds, but when it comes to, telling your mates at the end of the year what rank you got or at the start of next year, like, if you're in groups and stuff like that, that extra three, a couple hundred ranks or 10 ranks if you're in the top 100, like, it's massive. And I fell back from being in the top 100 to just falling out of it. And that's like, damn it, that sucks. So you can make or lose so many ranks in that last bunch of weeks. So you mentioned there you're looking at Hines, Latrell, Murray, and then a Cook, Grant, or Reed Marnie in that post. Well, obviously coming up, Hines potentially now, and then the rest of them post Origin. How do we get there? That's the big question mark that we need to answer. And then we're going to go through a bunch of players together here, guys. Big deep dive on Greg Marzhew. I've got some cool stats on him. And then you said needing to wait on cash downs. How are we going to get there?
Yeah, so I think we go through periods of having good cash downs where you can't pick enough cash downs. There's just
Yeah,
so many that pop up. And those are typically the times that we have the most injuries as well. So at the moment, we haven't had many big injuries the last few weeks. It's been,
thank goodness.
yeah, I know, but it's been the likes of Manu and the like these 25% owned guys that aren't like owned by everyone, and
True.
they're not in key roles that need to be replaced, like Jennings coming in or something like that doesn't really affect us.
No.
So it's when the big dogs go down and then they have an understudy that's going to get really good minutes, like the likes of Weeks. So I think what we could be guilty of sometimes is forcing trades, and then later on we run out of trades when there's a bunch of good options to cash down to. So I think in the weeks that there's no good cash downs, holding trades or not making the extra trade if you don't need to is a good plan, which is what I'm trying to do at the moment. Like I'm looking at my team and I'm like, next week I can really launch if you have full flexibility next week. So next week you can have multiple, like I can make 3 trades and get in like a Hines and then a cash down and then maybe even a good hooker if there's a good cash down option. Whereas this week, if I wanted to do it, I have to choose either a hooker or a Hines. So I don't have the option to get both. And
Yep.
then once you lock yourselves in, so if I go down like a safe path to a Sipley, for example, um, that frees up maybe 140K, which means I could go a weeks to a Hines. But in doing that, I'm locking myself into a Sipley who's probably going to have to stay in my team the rest of the season. And then if he goes back to a bench role in a couple of weeks and he's at 400K, like I'm not going to be able to trade him out. And then that extra 150K that I would have got if I went all the way down to like a base price guy that pops up at one point, potentially even next week. That's 150K that I can't then use to upgrade the rest of my team. So it's just locked in Sipley for the rest of the season.
Mm.
So yeah, it's really important which trades you choose at the moment. Like Marzhew is a big talking point this week, and I was looking at Marzhew as well, potentially like a safe Arth and Weeks to Marzhew and Hines. That's a decent option. But Marzhew, is he a keeper? Do you want to play him in your 17 every week? Do you have the depth where you can put him on in the emergencies and loop him every week? What's his schedule like? Does he even play on the Thursday, Friday nights? Or does he play mostly Saturday, Sundays through the back end? So you can't even loop him. So I think there's a lot of things to think about. And as I was saying, your trades from now, you really need to think about, do I want to have this person like this player for the rest of the season?
Mm. Yeah, it's a good way to think about it, and the schedule and stuff too for looping. But um, yeah, it's just yeah. There's so much to think about. There's so much to think about. Let's speak about him now while we are here. Right? Where is he? He's the hot. Surely he's in the who's hot list. Greg at the bottom,
Right.
0.32. Well, that'll be fun. Alrighty. So I just want to have a good chat about him. I was just looking at stats, obviously comparing to last year. He's got Ponga now as well. So even better at that. You got him at 479. So he's actually lost a tremendous amount of money. He was 734K to begin this season. So we know that he can get there, right? So last year he averaged 53.4, which is absolutely wild. But a couple of stats I wanted to look at here was actually try savers for one at point one. He hasn't had one of those this year at all. He's at one try a game last year. So he's at point 0.3 this year. And actually, he got his first turnover tackle for the year this year, this past game as well, which was at point 0.3 a game. So just those stats in themselves is absolutely wild that he played pretty much the whole season. That was his first turnover tackle and not one try save. And we know how liberal they can be at giving them out on the wing when you knock someone out. So obviously, his errors are a decent amount there. He's at 1.2 a game, which last year he was at 0.9. So it's up a little bit. So obviously, he hasn't played as well. That's what we're looking at there. But what we do see here is over this last sort of 6 weeks is a big improvement, right? So 36 in round 9, 49, 35, 35, 18 against the Storm, which was a bit of a shocker for him. His lowest tackle break numbers since round 8 there, where he did get 18 as well, funnily enough, but 42 and a 65. So you can look at that and pretty well guarantee somewhere in the mid 30s, which is where he's priced at, right? At 34. And as you were saying there, is he someone that you're happy to keep in your team longer term? And we do have to have these sort of cheaper guys in our side at some point. And is he someone that can free up enough cash to get somewhere else playing all year that can be solid? That's probably something we need to look at. And you were mentioning about if you were to get someone like him or someone a little bit cheaper, and then Sipley or something like that. And if you got to look at your side and see how many of those cheaper guys you have. Like for you personally, like Hands, if he keeps this sort of 50 odd minute role, maybe he doesn't go that great and he needs to be sold. Does Piakura stay? Sharp might need to go. Like you got a bunch of those guys at a similar price, and you probably got to look at your own team there and decide if someone under 500K is worth getting into your team, and do they fit your sort of plans and those types of things. Because really, with this try score, he had 2 tries before this one. There's every chance that he's at least half a try per game from here on out, and you'd expect somewhere around a 40 to 42 average. So you could make some money, score okay. The schedule, as you said, there in terms of teams that he's playing against, it seems pretty fine. There's a bunch of teams that can leak, but I haven't looked into the Thursday Friday thing as well. And
I just looked into it.
okay, cool.
So
What do you got?
so he has 9 games remaining for the rest of the season. And guess how many of the 9 are on a Sunday?
5.
7.
Oh shit, 7.
And the
Yeah.
other 2 are Saturdays.
Okay. My other question with that is like, if you brought him into your team right now and you had to keep the guys that you've got in the cheaper range, how many of them would he be ahead of? Like, would he make you 17 every week right now?
Look, right now, probably because
Right.
there's
Right.
some dodgy picks on that bench there.
And obviously with buys every week, I think anyone you pick that's over 400K right now is most likely going to play in our teams every week. If you've got 1 or 2 on a buy each week, the odd suspension or injury or head knock or something like that, they're likely to be a 17th, 18th man anyway. So you could probably just loop someone earlier that's at a similar price. Like for me, it could be a Piakura or a Wilson. And then you're likely playing Greg anyway. And he has that upside, right? And he at least has, the stats on the board from last year. And even 2022, he was at a 38.8, and that was with a point 0.5 try scoring rate with 1 game with 4 minutes. That goes up to a 40 without that as well. So 41. So really, you can expect anywhere around that 40 plus mark for Greg, I think, and not a bad one, but obviously still at a not a super cheap price. I suppose the other one to probably look at this week is Kohler. What are your thoughts on Tolu now he's back at fullback? Do we think he keeps the spot? Because I'm a bit worried that he doesn't keep it for more than a couple of weeks. It's just to get Tommy through this injury.
Yeah, I'm also worried. I think that once Tommy has a few runs on the park, maybe he goes back to fullback. It's really interesting that they switched Kohler to center and Hopewadi to fullback, and now
Yeah.
they've got Kohler to fullback and Hopewadi to the bench. It's yeah, it's interesting from Manly, like the switch around. I guess you could say that they did it because Kohler can play center, but Hopewadi can't. So they were just trying to get their best squad on the park.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's a weird one. I don't really have a whole lot of confidence in the Kohler move, but it could pay off really big if he keeps the spot.
Yeah, because the price is pretty nice at that. They're probably the two main guys at that price. And then we spoke about Ronnie last week, and he finally got through that game against the doggies there, which is a bit harder. And then it's a lot easier from here, their schedule. But they're a little bit off at the moment, aren't they, Sharkies?
Yeah, and then you've obviously got the round 20 bye, which is a tough one. I mean, I brought Ronaldo in super coach last week
Yep.
for James Salmon, which
Yep.
was about break even. But I don't know if I love him for fantasy. I think Marjew's got the if like for a similar price, Marjew's just got the bigger upside. He's got the bigger base with tackle busts and things like that.
Oop, there you go. Whoops, where am I going? Clicking the wrong thing. All right, there you go. Yeah, for sure. And doesn't miss round 20 as well. So that's something I'm thinking of to try and potentially hold a trade or two in around 20 is because of that ability to play and have multiple players that are going to be there around 20. And if I'm looking at Hines and stuff like that, we're going to have Iro. There's a few guys that are going to miss round 20 and these Origin backups and stuff. It's too hard to tell. And we're not even sure if like Fafita's to make Origin next week and then would he back up in round 20? So that's something you got to think about as well. Will Price is the other one at 415K. You're obviously in the market for a wing fullback yourself. Who would you be looking to target for? Are you maybe waiting for next week and see what happens with wing fullback for you?
I think so, because you've obviously got a few cash downs that have come up, like I the other Tungo,
Jake,
who's
yeah.
a base price. If he keeps that spot for next week, then that could be a good cash down because I'm not really loving the price option because of the price. 400K is just too
Ooh.
much for what he kind of provides. He had 45 with a try last week. Ponga's coming back. He's going to take a bunch of the kick meters, bunch of the milkshake, as they say. And yeah, I'm just not super pumped about that option. But yeah, this option is at least going to free up a lot of cash. You do lose a player around 20 though, so it really depends on your numbers for round 20. That's the tough thing at the moment, bringing in Hines or bringing in Madison. Like a lot of these good options that we have for, next week are having the buy the following week. So, and we all know how tough these minor buy rounds have been. They've probably been the toughest out of any
Oh
of the
yeah,
rounds.
by far.
So you just have all this unexpected stuff pop up. So do you really want to add another number to a minor buy round at this point? Like for me, I with Hines, like I've got Cody Walker and Galvin for next week. So
Yeah.
that's partly why I'm like, do I even go for Hines? Because I'm just giving myself a problem for round 20.
Yep. Yeah, you're looping, but it's another trade used and everything like that. So yeah, it's a wild one. But wing fullback and centre duel for Jake Tungle. That's cracking. Matto, I feel a little bit more comfortable with Matto this week than I did last week off the bench, obviously in that starting edge. And I actually think Sean Lane played really well through the middle off the bench for that couple of weeks. Where are you sitting at with Matto and obviously Bryce Cartwright as well?
Yeah, I think with Cardi, I think Cardi's a bit of an avoid for me just because I don't think he has that keeper status in him. I think he's kind of priced at what he's going to average at. He's got the big attacking plays in him. I think he's potentially a better super coach option than he is NRL fantasy
Mm.
because I think last week he had like a bunch of attacking stats or a bit of
22
attacking stats
tackles.
and only
Yeah.
and only scored 50. So his base just isn't really there. Whereas Madison's typically always had a good base, high tackles, meters gained, especially when he plays starting on the edge. I think he'll move into the middle as well. If you look at the Eels bench, there's not
Three.
really any middles on there.
Yeah.
So I think he's a decent option. And I've considered just going safe after Madison, for example, or I think I can even go maybe Fletcher Sharp straight to Madison if I want. But Yeah, it's just one of those tough ones where you've got Tuolangi that's coming back. He's going to take that edge spot probably back at some point. And then does Madison just go back to playing 40 to 45 minutes off the bench?
Yeah.
Is that going to be good enough? Yeah.
Feels like a month or so play, but yeah, you might just be a little bit ahead of Cartwright because you can mix between the mid and the edge for sure. We mentioned about the hookers, mate. I'm probably looking at Cook this week just because he plays at round 20 over Little and their runs a little bit harder for Jacob. But Cook, there's obviously the worry about if their season's done, is he going to lose those minutes as well? But it's hard to really fight with how well he's playing at the moment as well. So yeah, that's probably a risk worth taking, I think, in my eyes, really.
Yeah, he ticks the players you'd like to watch box, doesn't he?
Oh
Um,
yeah, when he's on.
yeah, it's just like nice to have an extra part of that South team as well. Like if you like we don't have Latrell at the
Yeah, that's
moment,
right.
and so it's a bit tough to watch. I've got Cody Walker, which is sometimes a good watch, but mostly not. But yeah, you can see that in the top 100 is already 30% owned, which is huge.
Which is the
And
big reason they've got there too. Yeah.
yeah, and nearly 25% in that top 1,000. So if he kicks on and gets some of these really high scores going down the stretch and you don't have him, it's going to be tough.
It's
But
still low enough too, like to make good ranks if he does well. Like he'll get up to 30 odd percent maybe. And that's still low.
I think he'll go above 30 because of Harry Grant and
Yeah.
JMK this week.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are going to look to bring him in because he has no more buys. So yeah, I think he's a really good option. I am strongly considering him for this week, but it just kind of means if I go for him, like with my low team value, is that going to hurt me down the stretch, especially if he gets lower minutes or something? But I think is a risk that it's probably a decent enough risk to take.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm all about that. Reed Marnie, a great buy as well. I suppose the cash outs this week, mate, is Adam Cook, Chanel Harris Tavita. A few people asked to mention Harrison Graham as well, coming back, but obviously that'd be a next week's kind of discussion. And he's a bit too expensive. And I was having a look, he's playing off the bench in Cup as well. So he won't play the full 80, I don't think, even if he was to come in, but he's like mid 400s. Adam Cook's going to lose his spot to Jamal, so I'd be avoiding that. It's probably really Ponga's a big one to mention here. Would you look at buying him this week or just wait and see the Origin sitch and go next week?
Yeah, just wait. I mean,
It'd
you
be
could
fun,
take
but
a Cobbo roll. It would be fun, but I mean, I think he's got the buy what round 21 or something like
yeah,
that as
that's right.
well. I
Yeah.
think he's just like probably just wait till round 22, in my opinion.
Yeah. Mitch Barnett, he's been absolutely cooking at the moment. Would you wait until round 20, maybe for him?
Yeah, I think it's tough to bring in one, his price has kind of got away a little bit. I think he's like 720.
Yeah.
So could you just get a Cam McInnes? Could you just wait to get Cam Murray? Like, I think once you get over that 700K mark and he doesn't play around 19, it's like maybe he's gone back to prop instead of edge. I don't know.
Yeah. I think McInnes is still a good one to buy. He's looking incredible at the moment. He's playing great footy. For the sells list, Manu, fair enough. Marshall King, same deal. Grant, I can understand both ways. Like I'm going to be selling him personally. Hopgood, Armstrong, Dylan Brown. I think people just had enough. They've been wanting to get rid of him for weeks, and that 20 odd was the push. And as well, if they're in your situation with having multiple guys fall round 19, I can understand that. Everyone's pretty good at sells this week. People are getting to the end of KO weeks, which makes sense. SJ, Longo. So the sells are pretty good, I think, this week. Kai Pearce Paul, you'd still be holding, obviously.
Yeah, I think you have to hold this week. He's named to start. So he's obviously you've got Lucas on the bench, which is a bit worrying, but he plays in 19. So if you've got unless you have an excess of edges for 19, I would definitely hold.
Beautiful. I'll get into a couple other guys in a little bit more detail, guys. But round 18 is a bit of a tough one. It's like get that hooker in your side, push for Nico Hines. Like he's not even in this who's hot list. So people are maybe waiting for next week. I do think he bounces back. I think he has a cracking week. It's probably do you get like a Greg, some type of wing fullback? Do you get that hooker? And do you go for Hines this week or do you wait? I think that's all team dependent and it's all stuff I'll get into in questions and getting up people's teams and stuff like that for sure, mate. Any final sort of thoughts before we run away? It's obviously not many people are trading right now, are they? Or they're spreading it around.
Yeah, I think it's just sit tight. Like obviously between this week and next week, I've been making a point of trying not to make trades the week before the major buys
Yeah.
because we know that a lot of things changes between now and then. So trade out your injured players, trade out your JMKs and things like that, and get a decent 17 on the park. If you've got a lot of trades, I would definitely start pushing this week and next week. But yeah, otherwise, I think you just got to sit a week a little bit and assess next week and then go hard from there.
Yeah, for sure. Like even your situation, you got 18 or 19 available. Making one trade, I think, would be max to really like get an extra 30 points or something like that. But otherwise, it's worth just holding again and kind of making a few ranks and then pushing from there with those extra trades because we can use 4 a week. It's crazy compared to Supercoach, only you can use in 2, except for the major buy. So yeah, just keep that in mind that you can launch in round 2021, 22 if you have those extra trades as well. So thanks guys for being here. Catch you in the next one.